we're working on our transitions, and we're still having trouble with stability, but I think we made it. How are we doing, Brian? Are you okay?
I'm green on this end at this point.
Okay. We both had upgrades on our Wi-Fi this week, and Brian's still looking for one more upgrade, possibly next week, right? So we wanted to make good on the one that we had planned earlier this week, and so we still wanted to get her done, I guess.
Right.
So we've been planning and a lot of talking about today, and wanting to share. We have a lot coming in, a lot about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, programming or boundaries. But hi, everybody. Hi from I Evolve TV, and we're back with Brian.
Hopefully.
From Healing for Ascension. We're back.
We are.
Little off our schedule, but
Yeah,
our schedule might be a little disrupted for a little while through the holidays anyway, so that's okay.
We'll do it too.
Yeah. I see that you have green bars over here, but audio's a little funny, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm getting that same from you, so
Okay.
we'll do what we can do.
Okay.
Right. So boundaries. Actually, I want to touch something really first before we jump on the boundaries.
Yeah.
Just because it's been brought to my attention a little bit more, and it was something we've talked about in the past couple of weeks. I think it was last week. And it was about grounding and why we need to be grounding. Well, besides all the normal reasons, right now, because of the magnetic poles being shifting, it makes it so literally we are not being able to ground ourselves naturally. What grounding really does is where we bring up the electromagnetic energies from the earth into us. And being that right now the electromagnetic field around the earth is almost non-existent because of things that are shifting, it makes it even more important for us and more work for us to even try to ground ourselves. So what I mean by that is our normal just little prayers or little normal walk out in the woods might not be enough to fully ground us. So we might have to go a little extra to be grounded.
Yes.
It's going to be a big thing for us in the next couple of weeks. So I just kind of want to bring that out to help us realize that the more that we focus on that, the more that we're going to be able to deal with everything what's happening.
I'm glad you brought that up, because Dreama and I talked a little bit about that this morning, and you've talked a little bit about the atmosphere last week a little bit, and I'm all my electronics are on a grounding mat. I don't know if you heard that this morning, and I sleep on an amethyst mat, and I do a lot of stuff myself because I am so I'm a little aware just a little bit of that kind of stuff. So it's very helpful. It's very helpful when you're doing a little bit more for yourself and aware of those things that are more alkaline.
Yes.
Can help you as well.
Yep.
That just kind of plopped in my brain.
Yep.
Things that are like
too far.
You don't necessarily have to get the ionized, which I do, but things that add lemon, lime to your water, those types of things will help. Things that are more alkaline will help those frequencies as well. So, I mean, just look up an alkaline diet. That will give you some indication of those things. Help with your all that. You're all that. So
moving on to boundaries.
Yes.
We're kind of wanting to cover a couple different things tonight. Actually,
hey, Brian, we're not in a snow globe.
What'd you do that
Our
for?
snow globe's gone. I don't know. I'm putting it back. There we are.
So the two topics are really going to be boundaries and programming. They kind of go hand in hand in certain ways. Shannon was talking about earlier, what comes first is kind of how we're going to start this whole thing off. So basically, what happens is when we're born, we are a blank slate. I mean, we have certain things in us, but as far as how we're going to perceive and work with the world, we are a blank slate. So at that point is when we actually start recognizing, we start watching our parents, we start watching, their friends, basically everyone that we are around, we are watching how their interactions are, and those are basically the beginning of the programs for us. Because basically what's happening is we're trying to figure out how to survive in this world, how to survive in our environment, that we're being brought up in all these things. So that's really where the beginning programs start. And then from there, that's where we find where the boundaries come. Because once again, from watching the people around us, we're deciding, what's okay and what's not okay. Not actually experiencing that yet, but just watching, saying, okay, they allow this, they seem to like it or whatever, so it's okay. And then we start with the boundary part. And then, so when we look at programming, programs are very, I mean, we can go really in depth with programs, or we can just go really light. I'm gonna go with a really light experience that I had with a friend of mine a couple of years ago when I first started working with programs and starting to understand programs. So me and my buddy would go disc golfing basically on a weekly basis, and he's very analytical and very matter of fact, let's say.
Very, very left-brained.
Very practical type of thing. So we sit and bullshit about things all the time. Well, what would happen is I would start talking about spiritual stuff, and after I get my spiritual point across, he'd come back at me at a different point of view, all analytical and blah 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 blah. And this was going on for a while. I noticed it like for a month, but I knew it after I started noticing. I knew it was something that was just constantly happening. So I decided to see how this program or pattern would fully unfold. So I started talking to him about analytical stuff. And mind you, this person is not a spiritual person. I mean, he does understand spirituality. He understands religion, but it's not something that is his thing. It's not his jam, you know. So I started throwing at him all this analytical stuff, more, right brain thinking about a spiritual topic, but not really even bring up that it was spiritual, just kind of throw it out there. And he would come back to me with a whole bunch of spiritual stuff about it. And I was just kind of blown away the first time. I was like, holy crap, you've never talked this way before. I didn't say that to him, just recognized. It was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So I did that with him for about a month. And literally every time I talked about something analytical, he came back with the spiritual stuff. And at one point I was like, hey, I mean, basically we went through this and we did that. We passed a couple holes, and then I just kind of brought it up to him. I was like, so have you noticed that, like, I've been talking some analytical stuff and you come back at me with spiritual stuff? And he just kind of smiled at me and looked at me. He's like, yeah, I actually just kind of noticed that. That's kind of fucked up. But it's just kind of showing you the kind of how easily we program each other. And it's not even like we're trying to program it. It's just basically our pattern, and how we fall into them and how what roles we are used to playing. If someone's taking this role, then I got to take up the other role. It's just how this pattern is supposed to work. And that's one of the ways of noticing these patterns. I'm not do that with everybody and all your different patterns that you're trying to notice, but it's something. If you notice something and you notice there's role playing going on, switch your roles up. See how that's one way you can tell if it's a pattern or not. Because if they're up that role that you used to play like that, there's a pattern there that we're working on together. It's not just one person's pattern. There's two players involved or more players depending on what we're working on. And when it comes to those types of things and our boundaries, figure out why are we allowing these things to happen? Where is our safe spot? Because once again, we have to have these good, healthy boundaries to be able to basically nourish ourselves, feel safe, all these different things. And ways that you can see that your boundaries are being basically walked over is you getting upset, you getting, basically getting your power taken away, whatever. Why allowing this? It's just going back and trying to understand why and where this is all coming from.
Right.
So the more that we actually start working and looking at these different aspects of ourselves and why, why these different players keep on coming into my life. Why do they keep on? Why do I have this victim mentality? All these different things. I mean, there's reasons for it that you have to actually be willing to look at them, which is really, really hard for a lot of people, because once again, we're going to deal with a lot of our trauma, and we don't want to deal with our trauma.
Yeah, but if we can really grace ourselves with the understanding that it really begins, and this isn't a blame thing, because this is how we exist. There's a, not to, I've been using the word indoctrination a lot lately, so I hate to do it, but it is. There's indoctrination, there's education, there's assimilation, and those lines blur all the time. And so where things fit sometimes can be very blurry. And so when there's all kinds of boundaries that are healthy, and they can be physical, emotional, spiritual, sexual, and they begin, at birth. And, even as a child, when we begin to, don't say that about your sister, don't do this, don't do that. And then we begin, the more advanced, the more, feelings of shame. Shame is one of the most powerful emotions in the human psyche. And so when we start to carry around those things, that can be very powerful in what we do. We all have been told, shame on you. Imagine how that's very powerful. You don't usually go back to doing those, especially those things. So you don't usually go back to doing those things if you're a little kid, typically. So when we start abandoning our own reasoning, you think about if you were a kid that had an imaginary friend, and you were told you don't see that kid, you don't see that friend, or you don't see grandma standing in the corner, or there's no ghosts in your room, or you think about some of those more basic things, those are more on the spiritual side, or you should feel grateful for blah, 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 maybe maybe you were asking for your parents' attention, but your feeling for wanting your parents' attention was still really valid. So you start, as a kid, you still put that inside you and validate that parent that was telling you forfeit your feeling for what your parent was telling you how you should feel. So you begin to abandon yourself, your reasoning, for what you're being told how you feel. So you start to abandoning your own feelings of so you don't trust yourself. So then we've been programmed and we don't know how to set boundaries, because we're not sure how we're supposed to feel. And so we feel those things. And when somebody says, do you feel bad about something, or do you want to go? And we're like, yeah, okay, I'll go. But, or, if you want to go see this UFC fight or something, you really don't want to go, but you do go because if we could go, actually, I probably would want to go, but maybe you really hate UFC and you really don't want to go, but you're going to go because you really don't want to disappoint that person, and you don't want them to abandon you in that relationship. So you forfeit your own feelings instead of trusting yourself and trusting that friend that they have their own emotions under wrap, and they respect you, but they wouldn't abandon you as a friend and trust and love you. So we do this and we create this cycle, and it perpetuates and perpetuates. And why would we trust ourselves when we've been taught to not trust ourselves? So
And we're always told not to trust yourself, basically.
Yeah. We have to learn how to do it. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it happens regularly, and it's a maintenance, and we do it over and over, and we, learn one thing, and then we run into the next thing, and we're like, oh, I thought I had got that under control, and I guess I have to learn it again. It's going to happen your whole life.
It's not really learning it again. It's learning it from another perspective. It's
Yeah,
different.
sure.
All different aspects of that. I mean, but once again, if you want to go back to the 3D mind, yeah, you're back to why am I still learning this fucking thing? I don't understand. Why am I still seeing it instead of saying, well, no, yes, it's the same issue, but how is it different than the last issue you dealt? It's always changing. It's always better, unless you're not learning from it. Then it's usually getting worse. And then from either way, you can see what you're supposed to be picking up. What's getting better in these things, what's getting worse in these things, because those are key things for you to be picking up on and trying to understand on different levels. I feel boundaries are a huge thing for everybody. It doesn't matter who they are in your life, whether they are family, your spouse, your kids, especially your kids. I mean, tenfold. I mean, the more that you can show them what healthy boundaries are, the further they're going to go in understanding and healing themselves. And that's really what we're here to do. Unfortunately, with this whole program that we're talking about from birth, it's not, our parents are the ones that, meant to do this to us. This is just how they were brought up,
Right.
Programming. And the more that we can actually wake up and come to it and actually start breaking it, the more we can it actually breaks it in our family line, both forward and backward. So that's really the ones that are awoke are that's what we're here to do. We're here to start breaking those lines and start helping, all these other people through their stuff in that way, not actually doing it for them, but doing it within ourselves actually breaks it energetically through our family tree, energetic wise and physical wise. So, I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah. And when we think of boundaries, we think of something that is of resistance, and it's not, or like something like a wall, like you're putting up some kind of emotional, like, no, it's not actually. So it's, if you can think of it, especially in the kid situation, that if they don't have a foundation in which they can build upon, they just lose themselves. They just fall apart. And then, I mean, you think about having a conversation with your friend, I was gonna say your girlfriend, or, whatever. And, you can't get a whole sentence out because sometimes an inappropriate age can't, go do their homework, or, it's 11 o'clock at night, and, they just sat down with a glass of wine to have a conversation with their friend, and their child knows that they're on the phone, and for whatever reason they decide that they're going to interrupt a million times. That's a boundary in which it has not been appropriately set. No, it is time for you to go to bed. I don't know. Go to sleep. It's bedtime. And that would be one of those times that there's an insecurity for whatever reason, and I can't begin to know what that is. It's going to be different for everyone. So whatever the family situation is. So that would be a good example. So it's not a point of resistance. It's a point in which we're able to own our own feelings and know where that is. So that's where boundaries come in. So that gives us our first indication of where those need to go. But they're definitely, that's where we define them, is where feelings get hurt.
Yeah. And the whole idea of building these boundaries is what you're doing is you're creating your own sacred space. Okay. Which is basically, this is your space to heal. This is your space to be able to be yourself without being judged, without all these different things. And so, for me, the way that I feel that I figure out where my boundaries are. Is I have to go into myself and I have to look at, okay, so what happened today that threw me off the rocker? Why is that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what am I allowing them to do that's making me get to this point? Because I don't want to get to this point, especially with these people. Where do I need to stop this interaction or know that we're done with this interaction because anything further is not going to be anything healthy for me.
Right.
And that's where we have to start working with this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel, even we're going to have all kinds of different boundaries that we're going to allow different people past, further than others. Obviously
Sure.
our love we're going to let get closer. If we really trust them. Sometimes we can't trust our loved ones much, so we're not going to let them in that far. Or if we do, that's how we get hurt so much, is because we let them
Mm-hmm.
in too far.
Sure.
And so these are all different things we need to understand about ourselves. Not only that we need to understand about ourselves, but we have to let the people around us understand about us. And
Well,
it's not about saying this is this is it. No, it goes back to actions speak louder than words. So you have to actually, when these things are coming up, you have to do something in some form to change it, stop it, whatever. And that's how you start building up those boundaries, and then also building up that self-esteem and that self-love, because the more that you do that, the more that you realize you're worth it. It's this part to honor you.
mm-hmm. um, I was about to say something, and I'm so sorry, Brian. But we do need to say that this is what I was going to say. Sometimes our family are the ones that seem to be the prickliest, they're the pointiest. So it's not even necessarily that that we necessarily let them in the most. They're the ones that seem to
Well,
the most,
it has
I
more
don't
to
know why.
goes back to those boundaries. You've let them in too far, and so you have to back them back out. To a point where it's not so prickly. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, yeah, family's tough because you were supposed to love our family, but you know what? Now people are able to be loved. Not in a safe way that you can actually feel secure with them. I mean, yeah, we can love
Yeah.
everyone. That's the problem. But
Well,
feel safe sharing myself with you? No.
mhm, right.
So I have the right not to. And that's really
Mhm,
just because you're my brother or whatever doesn't mean I have to let you in.
right.
Because obviously you've already went in, you've done some stuff.
Hmm.
You know, not saying I won't ever let you in, but you got to show me some shit before I'm gonna start letting those walls down.
Right.
So to speak.
Toxic. If somebody is cruel and toxic to you, they're gonna, whether they're family or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, hopefully you're working on, if you have been that way as well, and you're not rectifying that in some way. Hopefully you are. Um,
Right, and usually
there's
that
those things too.
way. So it's not like
Yeah.
they are all doing it to you. You've been doing it in some way, some fashion, also. And so
Sure.
you have to balance that whole thing. And yeah, I mean, part of it. And it goes back to people talking like all people talk about is working the light, working the light. They don't ever talk about the dark. Well, there's lots of different reasons for that, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Because yeah, we want to focus more on the light. I mean, it's not saying that we're not doing our shadow work. We're all doing our shadow work, whether we want to or not. That's just being
Mhm.
thrown. Especially if you're a light worker and been doing it for a while. You can't hide from your shadow work, but you can still push that love and light to people as much as possible because, especially right now, we need it. And that's
Yeah.
what we want to focus on. And yes,
Right.
we're also focusing on dealing with our shadow, but I don't need to be putting out there, I'm dealing with my shadow, blah, 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 blah. Because you know what? What does it matter? But
Right. And we tend to do those that really deep shadow stuff really in a really tight inner sanctum group.
yeah,
You
if not
know.
by, I mean, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I shadow work, there was probably maybe 4 people that I would share that work
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
with. And it's those people I know at least understand what I'm talking about without any judgment or any of that stuff.
Right.
That's willing to share it with them because
Th-
a lot of times that stuff telling Joe Schmo, he's gonna think I'm
Yeah.
all these other things that No, it was a growing process. This is what I had to
Right.
deal with and
Hmm.
release. It has nothing to do with what it was. It's
Right.
what it was, and I had to release it. And now this is where I'm at with it.
It's your urgent care group. you know.
Yep.
Um, so I did want to point out, though, in this context, that there's no such thing as I mean, people are going to cross your boundaries, but there's no such thing truly as other people crossing your boundaries, because boundaries are something that you set for yourself, not something that you set for other people, because you're not the boss of anyone. Well,
Well,
your children, but
other
like you
for you
can't expect somebody else to adhere to your boundaries.
without you actually stepping up to protect your boundaries.
Right. So it needs to be something that if you're going to set a boundary, like I'm really not going to accept somebody talking to me that way. You need to be able to, whatever that is, first you set your intention, whatever that might be, that maybe it's just that thought that would be the first step. So maybe the first step is you thinking that, and the second step is maybe you're going to say that, like, I don't think it's okay that you talk to me that way, or you text it to them, or you send it in smoke signals. There, however you express it. We talked about this too earlier. There needs to be some kind of expression, beyond the first thought, that puts it into intention, the boundary that you can then act upon, that is yours, that you own, that's your boundary. And then be able to move away from it. Chances are they are going to move themselves, because you have then expressed it. But
But also understand when you start setting those boundaries, especially ones that have been walked over many, many times, you're going to be tested. You're going to be
yes.
tested a lot because spirit, basically, your higher self does not, basically, your higher self is just here trying to show you what you keep regurgitating to it and telling it you want. So when
Mm-hmm.
you change your pattern or boundary or whatever, it's going to keep asking, are you sure? And testing you. So yeah, you told this one person that don't talk to me that way. All of a sudden, you're going to have like a half dozen other people from all different walks of life talking to you that way, and you're going to have to literally stand up to every single one of them the same way. Maybe not the exact same way, but once again, still saying it in one way. No, you cannot talk to me this way. I'm not accepting that. And that's just basically spirit hoping to reinforce and making sure you're positive with that choice, because they know how us humans we're never sure what we want, and we always change our minds halfway through the stuff. So
Right.
when you start changing those really deep patterns and boundaries, your spirit and your guides and everything are just going to be making sure that's what you want, because you've been doing this for so long. Are you sure you don't want to go back? And it's your choice. But once again, once we start stepping in that power and recognizing that, yeah, no, you're not going to do this to me. No, I'm not allowing this. The
Mm-hmm.
more you're actually going to feel better about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not you're going to have to keep fighting the same fight and feel like you're going to be losing. No, because each one, you're actually,
Yeah.
it's going to be kind of relentless because it keeps on coming up. What the hell?
Yeah,
But
sometimes it is just as simple as pointing out the obvious. Like if it's somebody not saying something nice to you, like, well, it's really not very nice for you to talk to me that way.
exactly.
Sometimes it is that easy, but
Yeah. Well, and once again, it depends on how long it's been going on.
yeah.
If it's just someone you just met that just stepped in and said, then yeah, that's totally the way to do it. But if it's been someone that's been doing it for 5 years, you're probably gonna have to be a little bit more stern about it. You're probably gonna have to say it more than once to that person, because once again, that person's already used to being that role model, or not role model,
Right.
but that role with you. So they're not even sure. Wow, why is this changing? What's wrong with her? Oh,
Or a family member that might say things like, well, because I care about, maybe I don't like that color on you.
right.
Well, I like it. Why would you? I
Yeah,
mean, I the only shirt I'm gonna have to wear, so why would you say that to me? You know, um,
But
Can
yeah,
you tell this has happened to me? Uh, and so we're at a party, like, what am I going to change into? Type of thing. Um, and so if you say, like, why would you say that to me? And the response is, well, I just care how you look. So then that goes into a whole nother bag of issues that really has nothing to do with me. Never did.
right,
Never did. But you know what? I liked how it looked because I wouldn't have wore it.
right,
So it was fine. And you know what? I probably got 20 other compliments of how good I looked. So,
yeah,
okay,
exactly,
the
yeah.
point. It's crazy. Crazy talk.
And once again,
Yeah.
part of the reason why we're talking about this is because the holidays are coming up, and we are going to be back
Yes.
with, maybe depending on how everything pulls out for each people, might be hanging out with their families this Christmas. And we always know how fun family get-togethers can be for the holidays. Sometimes they get a little stressful, and boundaries get walked upon, and buttons get pushed and all that type of stuff. And so we kind of felt like this would be a good time to talk about this type of stuff, because if you're not seeing it yet, you'll probably see it soon. Because
Yes.
I've been seeing a lot with a lot of the people that I've been talking to about basically keeping boundaries. I mean, because literally, boundaries are, like I said before, boundaries are how we basically stay safe, how we, feel our true safe, divine self, and where we actually go in to heal. You know,
Yes.
when we're able to go into our safe space and know that we can be our true self, and process whatever needs to be processed, whatever we just went through or whatever, you know, that's our safe space. And if we don't feel like we're safe in our own safe space, we can't heal ourselves. Because all we're going to want to do is run away from everything, because we don't know when the next whatever is going to come in.
Well, it's, perpetual self abandonment. We don't realize it, but we've then been, um, we've been indoctrinated to that. We've been programmed to do that. And so we're trying to avoid abandoning ourselves. So we're staying silent to it and not putting up a boundary and ignoring our feelings about it. Again, putting in some cellular trauma, creating things like IBS and, you know, headaches. Like, how many people have left a family gathering with a headache or an upset stomach? Right? Okay. Need I say more? Um,
And yeah, so,
right?
yeah. So once again,
Because
this
right,
is the time you're going to be able to see a lot more of this stuff. And
right. These are gifts these are family wounds, and they weren't necessarily. It's not a blame. It was what they were indoctrinated with, and so there was no awareness that to do differently,
right,
you know.
fair
But
program.
now we do. We know how to do differently. So buck stops here. I'm going to do differently. I say no.
I was going to say, it's up to us whether we want it to stop here or not. I mean, yes, we have to take that stand. We can let it keep going. And once again, freedom of choice. We're here to experience what we want to experience.
That's right.
Kind of done with experiencing a lot of these programs myself, and I've literally been shutting a lot of them down. And it's really interesting that, I mean, once you start recognizing certain aspects of yourself, or start claiming certain aspects about yourself, how quickly you get questions whether you are, if you're really wanting to do that or not. Um, I experienced that one morning, basically claiming my power back, basically saying that I wasn't going to, um, save anyone anymore. I have no problem assisting people and helping them, but I'm not saving anyone anymore. And I want to say less than 3 hours, that was thrown in my face, to the point where, like, it stepped over a boundary, or stepped on a boundary. got me really, really upset. And like to the point where I wanted to break things, more or less. And once I came to that point of realizing that I was that upset, it was like, whoa, why in the world would you do that? You just claimed this, and now you just gave away all this power, and look where you're at. Holy crap!
Right.
And literally, and basically, from going from that realization, within within a minute, I was back to being my happy self. Which,
That's great.
being a Taurus, that's not a normal thing. We tend to, once we get pissed off, we hold that until we fully let that rage go out, and it totally dissipated as soon as I came to that realization. Like, hey, wait a minute, you claimed this. Do you understand why you're upset? And coming to that understanding of what put me in that state of mind totally got me to the point of like, what the fuck? I claimed I don't want that. I'm not doing that. And as soon as I got to that point and did that again, it was
I
gone.
can't put this is okay for kids on Facebook now. You've said the F word like 3 times.
Why'd you say that? Why would you ever say that?
I'm not Facebook. I mean, YouTube.
Why would you ever say that?
Because there's two things you can like good for kids or not good for kids. And I if there's an F word, I can't say good for kids.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I dropped the F bomb quite a bit. So no, we're
You're
not.
so R-rated.
Well, I'm at least PG-13.
I think you've reached that limit.
Well,
You're like John Candy of the 80s.
no.
PG-13.
I could.
I derailed you. I'm very sorry.
That's okay.
I just thought it was funny. So you're being a bull Taurus.
No, I'm feeling my bull Taurus. That's what I'm doing. So yeah, being able to basically recognize and confront that is really, really healing. And don't be surprised that if you start claiming something you know that's been a pattern or a boundary or any of that stuff, do not be surprised, especially right now, that it won't take long to be thrown in your face to see how you feel about it. I also, I'm not 100% sure, but so far in my experience with a lot of this stuff is what I haven't seen it come back more than once. So basically, what I mean by that is like I made this claim, and then I got tested on it, and that was about a month ago, and I have not seen another test of that since then. So in my
Really?
mind, that part of me has been released. I mean,
Okay.
at least on this level, because normally it's, especially I'm giving a month time because that's how long it's been since that released. You'll get it at least 2 or 3 times in a month's period of little checks. And I haven't, I mean, it was one big one that I got right away. And then I think I basically nipped it in the butt because basically from getting really upset, it was been, I want to say within 2 minutes that I came to that realization of being thrown out of my power and like literally going down and doing exactly what I said I wasn't going to do 2 hours ago.
Yes.
So I think that's a big thing that's happening for a lot of. I mean, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is this is the time for us to heal ourselves on a lot quicker level. Is the energy is coming in such a way that yeah, they might be like intense checks, but
Yeah.
you know, once you pass that test, you're good for the next level as far as I've noticed.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up a book.
You always want to bring up a book.
I know. You think I was a librarian or something?
So
Well, I'm not going to say anything about Carl Jung. I'm just not going to do it. Promise. Okay. So he's my favorite. So The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Very, very good for helping you set boundaries. So just a little self-helper. And if it's not one of the 4 agreements, but he talks about you have the right to change your mind. That was a big one for me. Like, sometimes you're like going through this process and you're unraveling some things, and you get to a certain point and you're like, hey, I said I would do this, but now I'm thinking maybe I don't want to do that. You still have a right to change your mind. So that would be one of those things too. That was a big one for me. Especially losing my husband at 38. That was big. And I met him at 19. So that stage of self-actualization in your early 20s that you had, I did that as being a married woman. So everybody's developmental stages are vastly different. So having to learn who I was as a single individual is incredibly interesting. And boy, am I still learning.
Yeah. And once again,
I'm sorry, Brian.
it goes back to, we always have we can always change our mind. It's part of our freedom of choice.
Yes.
I mean, just because we choose one way, it doesn't mean we have to go that way. We always can change, because once again, as we're going down that road, we might come across more information that makes us realize, oh, no, probably don't want to go down this road no more. I'm seeing signs that say, oh, been here before, done this, don't want to do it again, or whatever. So
right.
Yeah, we're totally able to go back this way, or look at any other possibility. And that's the thing, is we always have more possibilities than what we actually see, because we're so used to only having 1 or 2 choices. It's either this or this. There's no third option. There's no other possibility. When there's really all kinds of possibilities, we're just goes back to those programs and everything else. Those are the only ones that we're allowed to see, because this is the norm. And believe it or not, there's so many more opportunities and things out there. We just have to be willing to look at them.
Right. So there's some other things that you can do as well. That if you're not quite ready, if you're not quite ready to maybe speak those words, some little in between steps, like writing things down, and maybe burning it. We've all heard that, but putting that intention out there. Cord cutting, doing some cord cutting, putting some intentions on there, anointing a cord, lighting a candle, doing some prayers, whatever speaks to you. There's all kinds of shamanic traditions.
Yep.
Google it. You don't even have to buy a book. Just Google it. Call Brian. Call Dreama. Call Sean. They're all on this channel. Right? Depending on where you are. So there's all kinds of people, and you guys all do work over the phone. So all that kind of stuff is all helpful. Eventually, I mean, a lot of that stuff can just actually happen just in your energetic body. It changes, and that stuff, people make fast feet. Right?
Exactly.
They do. And it just, your demeanor changes, stand up, sit up a little taller,
Everything. I mean, it's just the changing of your energy.
Yep.
So many different levels.
And might not be approached quite the same.
Well, it actually helps you process things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that the more that we do that, the further we'll get, the better perceptions we'll get, the more perceptions we'll get.
Right.
The better we're going to have all these different situations.
Right. Is there what else did we want to go into tonight?
I don't know. I think we covered pretty much. I just wanted to gloss over both these and just kind of get it out there and see what kind of questions we get more than anything else.
I actually had to set a boundary tonight. You didn't. I don't know if you saw that.
I was kind of looking, but no, I didn't fully look at it.
It was on the watch party comments, and I just I feel a little bad about it, but we were getting.
No. It's all
Sorry,
about.
we're getting way.
We're only here for learning. Here for anything else. Spiritual learning.
Well, yeah, but we're getting really dark. We're doing some dark stuff, or talking about some dark stuff, and and I think this individual is actually in Norway. Actually, he came on Jess and I show before, and it got weird, and so I let it go for a while and just let it with no response, thinking that, well, maybe I'll get the hint, just no response. No, just the dial got turned up. I just blocked it.
Yeah.
There you go, boundary.
Do with that stuff. Like I said, we're here.
Got weird. Way too weird.
Yep. No, spiritual learning. Not weirdness. I mean, not saying that spiritual stuff can't get a little weird, but not.
Definitely can be weird.
The dark, weird, not in that sense, I guess is where I'm.
Yeah, because I think when people hear shadows, they think that that's dark. No, you're dealing with things that are difficult. That's what shadows is. Things that are difficult.
Because maybe I didn't cover that at all for any of these. So my understanding of shadows and shadow work, just so we can at least understand where I'm coming from with it. In my mind, your shadow self doing shadow work is dealing with aspects of yourself that especially when you're young, you are in one way or another shown that it's not something that's going to fit in this reality. Okay, so they're basically aspects of ourselves that we don't ever let come out because of being shunned or anything. It's not saying they're bad aspects of ourselves at all. They're just parts that we didn't feel comfortable with showing because of whatever situation or whatever we were growing up with. It worked or jive with where we're at, but there's still aspects of ourselves, and there's still things that we still have to honor, and so working with our shadow self is more working with the parts of ourselves that we didn't want to acknowledge, but yeah, it's still come up. It's still in our reality. We just more parts of ourselves that we just don't understand. It's because there are shadow parts. They're parts that we neglect and just shove away, and the more that we can actually start looking at them and understanding them and giving them love, not necessarily saying that we have to go out there and put them all out everywhere, but actually just understanding it and bringing balance to that understanding brings so much more healing. And that's what I talk about when I talk about shadow work. There are aspects of ourselves that, for whatever reason, we didn't feel like we could show anyone or even acknowledge ourselves, for that matter. So, yeah, it has nothing to do with demons or playing with dark entities or any of the other shit. It has to do with ourselves and just aspects of ourselves that will not, for whatever reason, feel comfortable with showing or bringing out to light.
Yeah. He started using terms like a cult, and I don't want to try to figure out what it means by that. I know that people mean different things by that. No. I don't really want to. No, thank you.
Yeah, you know where I'm at. Something. I'm trying to stay positive. I don't need to talk about any of that.
Yeah. I know some people take a loosey goosey, kind of like the term pagan, and I don't really. No, thank you.
Right.
And I think sometimes people do that just to be like the bad boy image, like.
Yeah.
I'm over it. No thanks. Like I'm gonna like you just because of you.
Right.
And maybe that's his shadow. I don't know, but there you go. Here's a new one for you. I don't know. But we've got a lot of people to reach. So hopefully with love and light, and maybe this will bring it up for him. Should we recap?
I mean, we can.
Boundaries. Not something of resistance.
No. It's about our own security, personal security, so we can actually grow. You know,
Yep.
our
It's
safe,
self-awareness.
our safe place.
Yep.
Yeah, and literally, if people are pissing you off, it's because you're allowing them to basically cross boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
more or less. You know.
Yeah. And that's going from like A to like Z really fast. There's lots of letters in between.
Yeah, and we do plan on covering this again next week.
Sure.
We were just trying to get this out there, hoping that we're going to get hopefully some questions after people watch this for next week that we can start working on and covering. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of want to get this out there and see what kind of response we can get, because I kind of feel like both these topics are big for us right now, and
Yeah.
I don't know where people are looking for the most help at this point in time.
Well, I'm sorry, Brian. I think I brought up like early on 3 big words like the indoctrination, assimilation, and education. Like some of those things help us stay in this dimension. So all those things. So and before we go right off into that there's no imaginary friend there. Some of that's in, for good reason. Like not everybody else can see that, honey. So there is some purpose to those things, and we have to honor that as well, but also grace ourselves in the healing process, that shadow, and perhaps do it a little differently for our own kids. So
Exactly.
yeah, and it is self-awareness, self-integrity, and self-love.
All the selves.
All the selves. Yeah, I think that covers it. Do we get it?
I think so.
Good. Nice work, Brian.
Doesn't seem like it's too much.
Nice work, Ascension worker. Jess stopped by. I don't know if he's still watching or not. Hey, Jess. Nobody waves back, just you and I.
Yeah.
But so we'll sign off for tonight.
Sounds good.
Sound good? Should we play our jingle made for us by another personality on our channel, Chris Michael Moores? I never changed our caption. I guess we were just rolling with it.
It's that way.
Look at that. Right on the hour. So good night, everybody. Happy Friday.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
I